What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Wednesday night live stream real estate recap, where we talk about everything to do with the housing market and some other stuff. Got another great live for you tonight, bringing back one of my favorite people, Matt Murn, another real estate agent here in the DC area. He's got almost as many years experience as I do. I might actually have more, but together we have almost like 50 years. So a lot of experience here to talk about real estate and the housing market. Got some articles I'm going to bring up. We're going to talk about what the current administration is doing for the housing market or saying they're going to do and what's happening so far. So I am going to bring him on. But before I do that, if you are watching this on the replay, consider joining us live every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern time. It's a lot more fun when you guys come on live with us, ask us questions, engage in the conversation. So consider it. All right, let me bring Matt on. Hi there. Are you making fun of me?
I'm doing my best Caryn hands.
Stop. All right,
Hey,
you're never coming back. Thanks for coming back on. I know you've been doing a lot of TikToks and going live on TikTok. You're a lot better at lives than I do. So I really appreciate you coming back on, because I like what you have to say. You have a lot of opinions like I do. And there's a lot going on, wouldn't you say?
Just a little bit. I mean,
what do you think before I bring up the article? Like, what is your sense, like the vibe? I mean, we're in the DC area. In case you don't know, we're both in DC, Maryland, Virginia, and right outside of DC in Maryland or Virginia. And so, as you can imagine, it's been a little busy, a little crazy around here lately. What do you think the vibe is about the housing market? Not politics, just the housing market.
Yeah, I think that's really hard, because especially in January of an election year, after an election, we are consumed with politics. And I think you'll agree with me, it takes a lot of people's sort of eyes off the ball. But I think the vibe right now is a lot of government workers are trying to figure out if they're going to need to move or if they're going to have to pay their mortgage. And that's a real deal.
Yeah. And I want to get more into that later for sure, because it's definitely this week, especially in like the last couple of days, because a lot's come out the last couple of days, last week too. I've actually had some direct experience with what's happening reflected in my business. And so I'm imagine you must as well, because I know a lot of us have. And I do want to get into that. Let me bring up the article first so we can start with that and then go from there. So let me bring this up. Okay, so this was the title of the live stream, is the title of the article. Trump says he can cut the cost of buying a home. Here's the reality behind that. This is CNN. After officially taking office earlier this week, I guess this was written on the 22nd. Okay. President Donald Trump ordered emergency price relief for Americans on housing costs and other living expenses. Many Americans are unable to purchase homes due to historically high prices, in part due to regulatory requirements that alone account for 25% of the cost of constructing a new home, according to a recent analysis. I believe he's talking about the analysis from 2021. An executive action signed by Trump on Monday read. However, the executive action offers few specifics about how the administration plans to lower home costs. Cutting federal regulations may provide some cost savings, but many regulations are enforced by state and local governments outside the federal government's purview. Purview? Purview. How do you say that? Purview?
Yeah.
Purview. I mess up words sometimes. People that watch me know that. Plus, slashing regulations may not be enough to offset some of the Trump administration's other expected economic policies like tariffs and deportations, which could add to the cost of building new homes. The recent analysis cited by Trump's executive action echoes data from the National Association of Home Builders released in May 2021, less than 4 months after Trump left office for the first time. The study found that regulations imposed by all levels of government at the same time accounted for $93,870, or 23.8% of the then average sales price of a new single-family home, $397,300. The median sales price for a new home for sale in November of 2024, the latest data available, was $402,600, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. If I keep going, let me just read the rest of this. A separate National Association of Home Builders study published in 2022 found that regulations increased the development cost of building multifamily housing by about 40.6%. The NAHB has lobbied against what it calls expensive regulations around building homes. Jim Tobin, the CEO of the NHAB, said that although many land use decisions are made by local governments, easing federal restrictions would help lower construction costs for home builders. Federal regulations are one of the biggest headaches facing our builders, said Tobin. It really impedes our ability to build more housing affordably, especially at that low end of the market. Okay, so let's talk about this, and then we'll go on to the next bit. So basically, this is all about. The headline is Trump says he can cut the cost of buying a home. Okay, so here's the first bit about getting rid of some of the regulations to make it less expensive for builders to build the homes, assuming that the builders will then pass on that savings to their customers, to people that want to buy their homes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. We're assuming that if it costs them less to build, that rather than pocket those savings, they're going to pass them on to the people.
Right.
Right? I'm right here. So what do you think
No,
about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's going to say that greed doesn't rule all. So,
but do you think that that's what would happen?
No, I think there would be. Let's go back to the headline, right? Trump says he can reduce the cost of buying a house.
Yes.
This is in our worlds. This is such a small portion of the business that we do, new homes, and yeah, sure, make regulations less. They can save 25% on the purchase. They'll probably pass through 10% to the consumer, right? But home builders aren't known for being like the most gracious people out there. They don't pay their own transfer and recordation taxes. They pass that through to the buyers, and no buyer ever knows that. And they think they're getting they think the builders are so gracious because they're giving them $10,000 for closing help and upgrades and granite countertops. And then when they get to the table and they see that they owe a whole percentage price of the house on top of what they thought they were going to, it's all smoke and mirrors with home builders.
And by the way, I was just in Delaware last weekend. Their transfer tax is 4%. It's even more expensive. So I assume that builders do this all over the country. I don't know. I only know what we do here, that they make the buyer pay it. But you're right. I didn't even think about that. I mean, builders aren't known for being generous. They come off as like, hey, we'll give you this, buy down, and we'll give you this. But you're right. At the end of the day, they put a lot of the closing costs that on resale on existing homes is split between the buyer and seller all onto the buyer without them knowing. You're right. That's a good point.
Think about it. It's a business model built off of putting one home on a farm or plot of land that is $1.5 million, let's say, and then sticking a sign in front of it that says new homes for $400,000 on up. And you get in there, you fall in love with what they're showing you, and then they're bait and switching you into the basic townhome model down the street. So, I mean, that's their business. If we did that in resale, if we took you into a house and told you this mansion was $500,000, or you started at $500,000, they're like, yeah, what do we get? And we're like, the garage. We would be sued every day of the week.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to just flip it around a bit, because I was talking to one of my contractors today. We were talking about this, and he's like really happy about it, because a lot of times, even with renovations, they have to get permits and all this stuff. And he's like, this is great. If there's less red tape, I'll be able to do things cheaper. And I didn't realize that part of it. I'm like, really? I don't know if he's really talking about doing it. It's going to affect you. I didn't say anything because I don't know. Do you think that it actually will trickle down, not just to home builders, but to contractors and, people that are just, doing an extensive renovation, not something small, but something extensive where you need permits and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I think anything you can get a permit on, I know if you're using a contractor you work with who's a small contractor, and you say, I want you to build this fence, and they say, well, you need a permit for that. And then they'll ask you, are you going to pull the permit, or am I going to pull the permit? And if the contractor pulls, he goes, well, then my price is going to be another $500, let's say. And that's to pay him back for his time of going up to the courthouse, doing whatever he has to do. Right. And if the owner does it, they don't worry about it. I think when I was looking at this yesterday, because we're reading these articles and some other ones about the same thing. We're talking about costs of home ownership and all the costs that are involved with home ownership. And what are your monthly costs of home ownership? And governmental regulations easing up on that. Cool. That's a great idea. But this article and all of the other articles will state that the majority of the costs and the regulations are coming from a state level. And think about where property taxes have gone in the last 2 years. And think about where insurance costs have gone in the last year. There's so many different players in the home world that really, it's almost like they need to just do a clear house and start. I mean, that's the problem. We're such a big country and such a big government. It's almost impossible to fix anything because how many layers do you pull back to get to the good?
Now, I will say, because I live in a state, a county, and then a city within a county. Okay. I live in the state of Maryland, Montgomery County, and I live in the city of Rockville, which is also in Potomac. It's very confusing if you're not from here. Even if you are from here, it's kind of confusing. But that's the fact. So if I want to do a major renovation, I've got so many different layers, right? I have one of my clients that I just sold a place in the city of Rockville. She wants to put in a new range. Well, she's got to get a gas plumber to get the gas permit from the city of Rockville. And Montgomery County and the city of Rockville are very slow to record new deeds, right? To the recording process. So it doesn't reflect that she's the owner yet. So the plumber, or it's actually Lowe's, who's doing it, won't do it. I'm like, well, show them your closing statement, but it's like, but they have to go to the city of Rockville, and city of Rockville said it's not us, it's the city of Rockville. And it's like, well, so it's like, on the one hand, if we can cut some of that out, because I do feel like that does add cost and time and, quite frankly, annoyance. Great. As long as we're not like cutting out the safety of it, like the basic stuff that you need to be safe. The reason why there are permits,
Bring back asbestos. It's cheaper.
So we got somebody on here that says, Kathy, Christian, utility costs too, as far as the rising cost of home ownership, for sure. Now, I will say that utility costs are going up a lot of times because of what's happening overseas, what's happening with oil, what's happening with gas, what's happening, with all that stuff. Property taxes, on the other hand, have gone up in the last couple of years because property values have gone up. And people are like, well, what are you complaining about? Your house went up X amount, 40% in value. So yeah, your property taxes went up. Well, guess what? I'm not selling my house. So that's all paper money to me. That's all make-believe. That's monopoly money. You may tell me that, but the property taxes I have to pay, every month they get paid with my escrow, with my mortgage. So that I feel on a daily, I'm just talking about myself because I know everybody that owns a home feels the same thing. That I feel on a daily basis, but it's not something people really think about. Kathy says, I'm going to try to do this without my glasses. I'm in California and my utilities are over $200 a month with solar.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. What else do you got going on? Do you have natural gas? Do you have oil? Like, what are your other utilities? I'm just curious. Because I have to say, and depending on, are the solar rented? Are you including that? I sold a house recently where the solar panels were already owned. And so they inherited them and their house is all electric. And they have literally no utility bills. I'm so jealous. I was like, maybe I should do it. And he's like, it's going to take 10 years before you'll even get to where we are because we already own them. So she's saying, yes, natural gas. And I keep my heat to a minimum. Well, you're in California, unless you're in the north. And solar is owned. Interesting. Where are you in California? Just so I know. I hope that you weren't affected by the fires. So, all right, we went off on a little tangent there. While I wait, I want to see where she's from in California, but let me get all right, I get my glasses on, I can't read.
PG&E is my company.
PG&E is my company, Central Valley, near Stockton. Do you know where that is, Matt? I'm not sure. I used to live in Los Angeles for 9 years. You have to give me north or south. San Diego, San Francisco, LA. I'm sorry, I don't know where that is, where Central Valley is. Do you?
No, I've been living in Bethesda for 51 years. So I
actually lived in California for 9 years, so I actually should know. I've been back. I know. I'm back. I've been back for 19 years. And I'm old, so that's my excuse. All right, let me bring back the article because I want to go to the next part. Because the first part was really just about the regulations. Okay, let me bring it back. Meanwhile, after I get through this article, I want to talk what's going on the last week. I mean, even the last couple of days, because around here in the DC area, it's been so crazy. Okay. Trump's executive action comes amid a growing need for affordable housing. Yes, that is true. However, regulations are not the only reason homes have gotten so expensive. Many experts say the U.S. needs to build millions of homes to properly meet increased demand, spurred in part by growing number of millennials, the largest generation, reaching the age in which they would like to buy a home. That housing shortage, along with elevated interest rates, has made purchasing a home significantly more difficult for many Americans. The standard 30-year fixed mortgage rate was just below 2.8% when Trump left office in January 2021 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Last week, it was 7.04%. The rising in borrowing costs can be partially attributed to the Federal Reserve's recent interest rate hike campaign to tame a historic bout of inflation. Though Trump promised to bring down interest rates on the campaign trail, the president does not directly impact monetary policy, and the Fed may not cut interest rates again for a few months. Closing costs, the fees owed on the day when a home is purchased is finalized, have also added to the expenses homeowners must pay before officially owning a new home. The median cost of a loan paid by home buyers, including origination fees, appraisal and credit report fees, and title insurance, was about $6,000 in 2022, a nearly 22% increase from 2021, according to a report from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The Biden administration had cracked down on so-called junk fees hidden in closing costs, though it's unclear whether the Trump administration will continue that effort. Okay. So I'm not quite sure what part of this is saying how he's going to make buying a home less expensive. I think this is just saying why buying a home is more expensive. It's interesting when I read some of these articles, depending on who writes this. I mean, CNN is very liberal. I have another one, if we get to it, that's written by kind of a more conservative approach, and they love to blame each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, no matter what it is, it's kind of wild. They love, like, we didn't. This is your fault. This is my fault. I mean, this is not my fault. And so basically, they're saying that when Trump left, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate was 2.8%. Well, yeah, we were in a pandemic and nobody was doing anything, and they tried to stimulate the economy. They also wrote checks with Trump's signature on it and sent them out to people. It was a very unique time that shouldn't be compared to anything. They shouldn't say, well, when you left, it was 2.8. Now, it's not his fault. I mean, that was the pandemic. That's not Trump. It was just nobody knew what to do. Whether it was Trump or Biden, my opinion is nobody knew. Nobody knew how long it was going to last. All we knew is everybody couldn't go outside for a little bit. And they wanted to make people do stuff and stimulate the economy. And that's what they decided to do. They went a little crazy on it, which then it didn't last that long. And so all of a sudden, everyone had all this money and started buying all this stuff. So then inflation, and then they had to fight inflation, and I can go on and on and on. But I don't think that was the president's fault. I think that was a unique situation and what happened. What do you think?
You can't tie. Well, first off, Jerome Powell was appointed by Trump, so it's not an issue. I think of interest rates of where the president is. I think sometimes the pressure from the presidency, the pressure of the Bush presidency when they needed interest rates down, the pressure of the Obama presidency when they dropped rates to 1. These it's happened throughout time, but the rates aren't the Fed rate has been coming down. It didn't come down today, but it has been coming down. It's just the interest rates have been staying up because of the treasury bonds.
Do you know what? Did you watch what happened today? Because I didn't. I was too busy. What happened?
I saw a blurb when I was coming in, just saying that no change.
Oh.
So it was that the mortgage rates reacted a little bit prematurely yesterday, and they came down a smidge, and then they went back up. So we're living in a 6.5% to 7.5% world for a while. And so we get back to his question of how do you make housing affordable? How can Trump make housing affordable? One, let's talk the two different worlds. We've talked about new home build. Okay. Maybe he can reduce the price of a new home by 25%. That would be great. But like we're talking about consumers, watch as I tell my daughter, look over both shoulders when you're walking down the street, because you want to make sure that somebody's not putting their hand in your pocket. Okay. Then we have resale, or what Caryn, we do new homes every day, but we are mostly resale agents. We sell homes that have been owned before. Okay. And the complaints there are that they're too expensive and that interest rates are too high. And I'll tell you, the hardest thing I heard this week was I think this guy's maybe 27, 28-year-old say to me, my generation has decided in a whole that we will never be able to afford a home.
Oh.
So we're just going to all stay renters.
We're gonna. I could say. I thought you were saying. So we're all going to live with our parents.
No, but they're all going to say they're like, we like our apartments. And
Yeah.
and to me, that idea that this home ownership being the American dream, or home ownership just being owning your own destiny in a way is how it feels. I'm sad. That makes me sad. A lot of things have made me sad this week, right? That was one of the things that made me sad. But so it's a question I ask you, Caryn, with our clients aren't dropping their price. So we have no inventory.
Yeah.
We still have residual buyer demand from last spring market. And we have interest rates, the highest that we've seen them, except for that 1 month in 2011 when they went to 9% after AIG blew up, right?
They were 8% last year.
Okay. Make me a liar. It's fine.
I'm sorry.
But
I want people to feel good about the 6 and 7%.
What's the answer for these younger buyers? What's the answer for these people who think they're just priced out of the market and they'll never, ever be able to buy a home? How does Trump fix that? Because he didn't talk about it in all three of those articles that you and I both looked through prior to this live. Never did they mention actually the resale home buyer or the first time home buyer, who is the hardest to buy a house because they are the ones who have the least amount of money. And that's the majority of the transactions across the country.
Well, I think that lowering mortgage rates, he does talk about that. That would affect people in the resale market.
That would help affordability. Yes.
Yeah. He says no one wants to leave into a high interest rate. No one wants to. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. My daughter says that she'll never own a home and she's 27. And it's very sad. That does make me sad. I hate that they feel that way. You know, my kids are 20 and 21. Or 2021? No, 19 and 21.
I was going to say, I thought there was a little bit different.
Well, actually, today, they're 19 and 20, but she'll be 21 in 2 weeks. So
my kids are both 21 and 21 right now. It's easy. When they're twins, it's easy. You never.
Yeah, I know, but our kids are the same age. But that does make me sad. I think that something has got to change. You know, here's what we'll get back to the article in a second, but here's what I do think is going to happen. I think that the people that are locked in, like myself, at low interest rates, that are like, you know, I was thinking about moving. My kids are off. I'm an empty nester, but you know, I have 2.7825 or whatever it is, 2.5%. Why would I do that? I think people like me who thought they were going to make a move before all this happened, there's going to become some interest rate fatigue. I think after a while, it's going to be like, it's not changing. I'm not waiting any longer. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not there yet.
I think it'll get to a point where if you got to move, you got to move. You know, if you get to a point where you're like, this is too much house, the utility costs are too much, the insurance costs are too much, the taxes are too much for me, what I want my life to be right now as a, empty nester. And I could do this cheaper by moving to wherever, even with the interest rate. So I think that, yes, call it interest rate fatigue or just call it annoyance with the market, that you are going to see some movement with that. The two things that I posted this yesterday, the same question, like how can we make housing affordable, and got some good comments. And it's funny, the trolls that associate themselves with a certain person have not been out in force lately. So when you mention his name on social media, you don't get jumped on. So I got actually some decent comments. And one of them was talking about, I don't know if you know about this, the social housing project in Austria, in Vienna, where they have a public-private partnership to provide not high-end, but high-end public housing for all income brackets. And it's used, the income entry into it is so high that the middle class can live in these. And because they're public-private partnership, Vienna spends a ton of money maintaining them, keeping them up. They're in big public squares. It's not like in DC where they take the public housing and they slide it all the way over to Anacostia and just say, sit there. It's an interesting concept. I'll send you the article.
Yeah. But I mean, is it so it's subsidized, what you're saying? Or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah. So
How,
they
is it like a
basically,
lottery? How do you get in?
I don't know that much about it, but I do know the idea is that you have a nonprofit partnering with the city government to create these apartment units, and then it's rent control and all, a little bit like, yeah, I mean,
Like a
and
co-op? Yeah.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, kind of, but there's some that are just apartments. They're owned by the government, by the city, and this private partnership. And the idea is that it's not like HOC or what we have here in Maryland, where after 23 years you can sell it on your own. These units all just stay in the program, and they maintain them and keep them nice so that people want to live in them. And they've taken away the stigma of public housing. Now, I'm not a socialist, but somebody put that on my feed, and sometimes you get a comment and you go down that trail. It's a really interesting idea, but. And then the other thing I think that they should
But
do.
they don't own them.
No, they don't own them, but
Okay.
they look at housing differently. It's
Yeah.
not an investment there; it's a place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, David. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. So I think that the inventory will not people that have to move. I'm not talking about the divorce and death and the 5Ds that Robert talks about. Could never figure out what that fifth D was. I had last week or 2 weeks ago I was trying to figure it out. But I'm not talking when people have to move. I'm talking when people just wanted to, but they don't want to give up their low interest rate to then go get something with a higher one. I think slowly those people are going to be like, you know what? I'm sick of living in the suburbs. I want to go into the city, or I'm sick of living in the cold. I want to move to a warmer client, or I want to be near my grandkids. I was going to wait, but whatever the reason is, that they don't have to move, and they're not moving now because it's cheaper to stay. I think eventually going to be like, what's the monthly number? Not that it's 7%, but what's the monthly number for what I'm going to get when I move here? Can I do that after I sell this place and make money? Maybe I can. Maybe if I sell this place and make X amount of money and put it down, that monthly number will come down. And I think that's what's going to happen slowly. And that will create a more balanced market. That's my opinion. No one's saying that, not just me, but I can because I have a very close example myself, because I empirically am starting to feel that, I think it's like, I'm going to tell you all something, but don't tell anyone. Nobody watches this, right? So no, I'm going to tell you. Okay, I'm going to tell you. So we went out to, look, I'm like blushing. We went out to Delaware last weekend. Started looking at houses to buy, right, for a second home, for a beach home. We found one, and the interest rate is so high. And at first I'm like, I can't. There's no way we can buy this place with this high interest rate. My first home I ever bought, whenever it was a million years ago, it was 6%. And that was like good, and then it went lower since then, right? This is not the first one's in California. So to see like 7.5, whatever, I was like, no. Because remember, it's going to be second home, so it's even higher. Well, we just asked people to run the numbers, right? Just ask them to run numbers. If I put this much down, what would it be for a month? All right, let me put a little more down, maybe take some money out of my retirement because this is and all of a sudden the numbers started to make sense. And all of a sudden I didn't really care what that percentage was. It was about what that monthly number was. So if I'm going through this, and I'm pretty conservative, I can only imagine that eventually, I'm not saying today, but eventually more people are going to start to be like, if I did this, what would that look like? And what would that monthly number be? And then more inventory will open up. No, I'm not selling my house, so don't look at me like that. But
so I think you're on something. And you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about your house, and you were like, sure, I have equity, but unless I sell my house, I can't get my equity. Right. I think our boomers are going to come into a situation real quick, because they're all in their 70s and 80s now, where they're going to need that equity for their kids, for their care, for whatever. And it doesn't matter what their interest rate is. You can't get to the money in the piggy bank unless you crack it open.
Right. And what you mentioned, the property taxes, insurance, utilities, like Kathy said, all these expenses are real everyday expenses that are getting higher and higher and higher. The equity is monopoly money, because you're not going to see it till you sell your house. Combine the two together, and all of a sudden, people are going to start to sell. By the way, I'm not a boomer yet, in case y'all are wondering. I'm old. I'm not that old. Just saying. just putting it out there because I know I'm old.
Do you know the age definitions
I am
for all
Gen
generations?
X
Okay.
or Gen
And
Z. No, I'm
what
Gen
are
X.
your kids?
Gen Z. We're one letter apart. Gen X, they're Gen Z.
Yeah.
Why? What are you? Are you Gen Z?
Yeah, I'm Gen Z. Couldn't you tell?
You're Gen X too, right?
Yeah, I'm Gen X.
Gen X is the coolest.
There's someone very close to me whose birthday is on a cusp year, and it is a conversation that we have all the time.
Don't throw her under the bus, Matt. You're not going to be able to go to sleep tonight. Don't do it.
I know.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to change the subject. All right, let me get back to the article. But I think that is what's going to happen. And if you guys are watching this on the replay, comment, tell me what you think about my theory, because this is not something I'm reading. This is something I'm experiencing. And I feel like when you're experiencing something, then obviously other people must be. I can't be a party of one. So yeah.
Well,
okay.
We
back
proved
to,
that. We talked about that. The Gen Z are saying he was never going to buy a house, and we had somebody comment that their child said the exact same thing to them. So you're right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's always where there's one, there's more, as my philosophy. All right. Tariffs and deportations could hurt cost-cutting efforts. Despite Trump's executive action seeking to lower the cost of building new homes, many of his administration's planned economic policies may have the opposite effect. On Monday, Trump said he plans to move forward with an across-the-board tariff of 25% on Mexican and Canadian goods on February 1st. My birthday, by the way. Yes, I'm going to be older. I got it. But many home builders use lumber from Canada when building new homes. Without an exception for those imports, a 25% tariff on Canada would make the cost of building a home significantly more expensive, multiple home builders told CNN. I've been in this business since 1988, and I've never had a problem getting lumber. But if the price of lumber goes up, we have to pass that along to the customer, said Gary Frank, who owns a home framing construction business in Southern California. We can't sustain that, so we'd pass it along. Mass deportations could also make construction labor costs more expensive, Tobin said. We do not have enough trained new workers in the domestic workforce, so we have to go over our borders to attract that labor. We're going to be mindful of how construction labor from the immigrant pool is affected by what the president is doing. While tariffs may go up on one side, if we lower the regulatory burden on the other side, a lot of these things could be a wash, he added. We will need to look at everything holistically as we move forward through the next 4 years. So I want to talk about this. And I also do think, like I said, CNN definitely slants one way. I have another article, if I have time, I'll bring up that slants another way. But let's talk about tariffs and deportations, because I agree with them that, if you lose some of your workforce, and I'm not in the building industry, so I can't comment on that. But if what he's saying is true, what Tobin's saying is true, that we're going to lose some of the workforce, less people, it's going to cost more, right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
If you are, raising tariffs and it costs more to get the supplies, like we said, builders are going to be like, oh, I'll eat that cost, no problem. It's going to cost more.
Especially like one-off home builders, they can't afford to eat those costs. Those guys are operating usually pretty close to the bone. It's not like they're making a killing building one house at a time.
Yeah. And even not, I know a lot of this is slanted toward home builders because I guess the philosophy is we need more inventory. Why don't home builders just build more and that'll create more inventory and then we'll have affordable housing? I think that's why they're focusing on home builders. Like if we make that cheaper, then they'll build more and then we'll have more housing, more inventory, and it'll be cheaper. I guess that's why they're focusing more on home builders and not resale.
They're also focusing on his other plan, which is to use federal lands to build new houses and to take back parkland to create, I think I was reading the article, it's 25% of the country or 29% of the country is owned by the federal government.
Is it that much?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah. And that they can use that, he said that they can use that land to build on now. This gets back to the rub. Always look for the other hand in your back pocket. There's nothing near the land the United States owns. So the federal land is in the middle of the nowhere land that there's no industries, no corporations, no business, no mass transit. And that's not where we're having a housing problem.
But and I've said this before in my lives, if there were a way to build in these more remote places and create a driverless car service to take these people to work until a commercial was built, so they could take a nap, they could watch a show, they could, do whatever they got to do, then maybe it could work. But I know I'm reaching. I mean, a lot of things have to happen.
That's rebuilding a whole city, though. I mean,
You know what
really,
I'm saying? Just the commute until you build the city, until you develop more. It's just about making that commute manageable, that you're not driving it and you can actually get work done, or you can, like I said, you can do nothing, I didn't know, I just was trying to think of a way that we could take something that's so remote and make it work with the nearest, commercial area.
Work from home.
But that's not happening.
Right.
So let's talk about that. So the president has now said everyone's got to get back to work. And then he said that, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, so if you know, correct me. If you don't, then someone will correct us. He basically offered, I don't know how many federal workers, severance, for lack of a better word, to quit, right? So he wants everyone to get back to work, and he wants a lot of people to quit, or he'll fire them. Am I getting that right, or am I not?
No, it's not firing, and I have it right here, so that's why I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
So, I have to put on my old man specs.
Okay. I'm going to be older.
All right. This was in response to the return to office, and most people have probably seen this has been distributed. It talks about why they're returning to the office. They're looking for performance culture, for more of a streamlined and flexible workforce, and enhanced standards of conduct. And it says these 4 pillars you have to follow if you choose to remain in your current position. Oh, sorry. Yes, we thank you for your renewed focus on serving the American people to the best of your abilities and look forward to working together as part of an improved federal workforce. At this time, we cannot give you full assurance regarding the certainty of your position or agency, but should your position be eliminated, you will be treated with dignity and will be afforded the protections in place for such positions. If you choose not to continue to work in your current role with the federal workforce, we thank you for your service to your country, and you will be provided with a dignified, fair departure from the federal government utilizing the Deferred Resignation Program. This program begins effective January 28th. That was yesterday, and is available to all federal employees through February 6th.
I thought I read something about $25,000. Isn't that in there somewhere?
No, it is if you resign on the program, you will retain all pay and benefits regardless of your daily workload, and will be exempt from the coming back in the office. So basically, they're going to pay out all you have to do to resign from the government is respond to this email, resign, and they send you this. So it's if you don't want to come back to work, we'll pay you till the end of September and leave all your benefits in place. There is your severance. Have a nice day. And they sent this out to 2 million government workers yesterday.
That's so crazy. I can tell you that I had a client that they were so excited. They were like, he worked from home and they were moving to Vegas to be closer to his family. They have little kids. I already went over there. We're going to get the house ready, put it on the market. Last week, got the call, or was it last week or 5 days ago or something? Got to go back into the office. Can't do it anymore. There's one piece of inventory that was going to be on the market, not anymore, and I know if it's affecting my clients, I don't know if you've had any had a direct you effectly, but, what about oh gosh, why do I even bother? I cannot see. Mrs. LJ, what's going to be done about all the extra traffic? Another hour on the road.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
We'll all be sitting in it.
Right. Also, I've heard we had at our office meeting today, they were talking about different people in the office had either a husband or a wife or a cousin or a client that did go back into the office, and they had no place. There's no desk for them. There's no space.
I have 4 stories from the last 2 days. I have one who is a 25-year federal government lifer who is within striking distance of retirement and has been through, in 25 years, that's more than just 2 administrations, And
Yeah.
as administrations changed, I've always said to him, do you like the new guy? And he's like, I don't care who the new guy is. He's like, I do the job. I'm a government worker. Government workers work for government. They do the job. And now, you know, he also has a friend, all those things. And he's like, I may just sell and leave. He was so put off by this thing. I have another one who is at DHS. When I asked him about the return to work, his comment to me was, we are 300% of capacity at our office. So unless we're going to be have bunk beds, which I've heard through the rumor mill, they're telling them stick people in conference rooms, stick people in any open space you can. And then I have a couple of friends who moved down to Florida, like your Las Vegas guy, and they got the memo last Friday, be at work by February 15th.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
And it's him and his wife. And they're like, we have to find a house. We have to get out of our lease. We have to, so it's impacting these people's lives.
It's so disruptive. Kathy says, my sister works for the post office and she received that email too. She's always had to come into the office for work. It's amazing. I mean, how many did you say it went out to 2 million or something?
2 million. Yep. 2 million federal workers.
And then I've heard that it actually was not his idea. It was Elon Musk. I don't know if that's a rumor. I don't know if that's true, but I heard that that's where it all like originated. And it just, listen, this is not a political channel. We're talking about the housing market, but all this stuff affects the housing market. Do you know what I'm saying? When people become so disrupted and things become so unknown, in my experience doing this 22 years, people freeze, right? When they don't know what's going to happen, they freeze. They don't make a decision. And if we're already saying we don't have enough inventory, we're not going to get more if people freeze. Do you know what I'm saying? There's not, unless there's somebody that says, like your person, I got to go, I'm out, and then they sell. But in my experience, when disruption happens and unknown happens and people will get a little nervous, and they don't know what to, because it's not like this has happened before. And it's not like the other part of it, I know I'm rambling a little bit, is that the backstory is that he's actually not allowed to do this. Like, it's not like something that has the power to do, and so the disruption is going to be temporary. I've heard it's all going to be taken back. I've heard, I don't know, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's really interesting because I understand the new administration wants to come strong, and I think they're doing that. And I didn't see the report today about interest rates, but if nothing happened, that to me is a sign that, one thing is not under his control that he said was going to be. So what else is not under his control? Do you know what I'm saying?
Eggs.
Where are the eggs?
Eggs aren't under his control.
For eggs.
I literally was buying eggs the other day, and I've paid no attention to the price of eggs. I have an egg a month, maybe. And I was like, get eggs. So I was at the grocery store. Got the big thing. There's a sign at the grocery store that says, there's
we have eggs.
Bird flu, and that's why we don't have many eggs. So then I get my eggs, and this lady walks up to me. I always smile at her, and she's like, those are going to cost you half your paycheck. And I was like, what random world am I living in where the lady's going?
Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you, people are a little crazy right now. I'm not surprised that somebody said something to you, even about eggs. In the meeting today, when there was, there was a bunch of us came in the meeting, and everyone had a different story, and everyone had a different person that was affected, and in different ways. Showing up to work and having no place to work. How is that productive? Getting an email saying you may not have a job. How is that productive? Saying that we're going to lower interest rates and yet they don't go anywhere. How is that a promise? I'm going to bring up this other article because it's kind of, in my mind, feels like this, the woman I just read feels, should I bring it up? It's a little political. It's about home building though. All right. I'm going to bring it up and we'll see what you think.
Okay.
I can always take it back down. So I started looking at it because the article was Trump sketches out a battle plan on housing affordability, right? It's written today. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, here's another one. Housing affordability has become a front burner issue, and President Trump spared no time setting out his plan targeting the government regulations and red tape adversely impacting the housing market. Trump's January 20th executive order delivering emergency price relief for American families and defeating the cost of living crisis notes that the high cost of living is, quote, due in part to regulatory requirements that alone account for 25% of the cost of constructing a new home, according to recent analysis. The executive order directs all agencies to do what they can to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply. The Department of Housing Urban Development, HUD, would be a good place to start. Last year, Biden's HUD imposed stringent international building code requirements on all new homes qualifying for federally backed mortgages. Climate change activists were pleased by the move, but the National Association of Home Builders estimates it could add up to $31,000 to the cost of a new home. In fact, this may be the single most egregious example of a Biden administration agency abandoning its statutory priorities. Among HUD's core missions is to expand home ownership in pursuit of a costly climate change agenda. Rescinding this requirement would be an important step, and there are likely other green policies at HUD that need revisiting as well. So far, do you feel, does this feel different? He has no words. I will continue.
No, I mean, so let's roll back up here. This executive directive or memo, whatever they're calling it, about telling all departments to do everything they can to bring down the cost of things. Now, okay, we talk about planning, right? And I always talk about smart planning and doing that, right? So it has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Just sending an edict out that says make shit cheaper isn't.
You want to see it? I have it. You want to see the executive order?
No, I'm okay. I believe you, but I think this is.
It's awful. I'm sorry. It's so mean. It's really mean about Biden.
It can't be meaner than the one about transgender, because that one was disgusting. But what the problem you see with this, let's say, government and politicians, see how I'm saying so like middle of the road, you can't tell what my beliefs are, or they find one talking point and they're going to repeat it over and over and over again. And that 25% number, which you mentioned it when you read the first article.
Yeah.
That 25% number is based off of a research project done 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
The economy was different 4 years ago. The housing starts were different 4 years ago, and everything was different 4 years ago. So we're going to sell the American people another promise. We're going to reduce this by 25% based on old numbers. And that's going to fix everything. Look at me. I'm great. I'm the best that ever was. And instead of actually, and this might be this is going to sound bad, generational, because I've noticed sometimes people our kids' age get very narrow focused, but hyper focused. So they'll focus on this 25% and how it's going to fix this housing problem and blah, 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 but never look around the problem and try to see what other parts of the industry need fixing, or, you know, the housing.
I think it's just, it's a low hanging fruit. You know what I'm saying? It's low hanging fruit. But like we said, even if 25% of the cost of constructing a new home is, you know, permits and regulatory requirements, like we said, there is no guarantee that those home builders are going to pass that savings on to the customer. They never say it anywhere. So like, and we're going to have an agreement with them that makes sure that they show you that they're giving it to you. It doesn't say that. And they're not going to cut out all the regulations. They're just saying that they want to make them, you know, a little less.
We're going to save you 25% on regulations. We're going to cost you 25% on labor and lumber. So,
and then we're going to get rid of all your construction workers. All right, let me read this more of this. You're gonna like it. Okay. At the same time, Biden's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Agency finalized costly regulations impacting almost every major home appliance. When air conditioners and furnaces and washing machines and water heaters and dishwashers are all going up in price, thanks to federal regulations, it starts to add significantly to housing costs. The appliance regulatory onslaught needs to be reviewed and dialed back as much as possible. The Department of Interior also plays a role. Far too much of America is owned by the federal government, including some land suitable for housing, but off limits to it. In addition, the Biden administration's expansive interpretations of wetlands and endangered species provisions continue to keep much promising private lands from being developed. Matt, we were wondering what the problem. I'm sorry. We're not being political. Well, maybe.
There we are.
James Burling, Vice President for Legal Affairs at the Pacific Legal Foundation and author of the timely book, Nowhere to Live, The Hidden Story of America's Housing Crisis, has documented numerous examples of housing projects blocked by such land use restrictions. Presidential candidate Kamala Harris took an entirely different approach to housing affordability, leaving untouched all the costly red tape and instead promising an array of new subsidies, including a budget-busting $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-time homebuyers. In contrast, President Trump has embarked on a much more rational plan by taking on the many government-inflicted measures that are a big part of the reason housing has become so unaffordable in the first place. There you go.
You okay over there?
No, but I wanted to bring this up because the last article with CNN, which we know CNN's, veers left, and this one I read, and this veers more conservative. And I think it's important. I think it's important to see how the same, because we are talking about the housing market. We're not talking about politics. We're not talking about Democrats or Republicans. We're not talking about Trump or Biden. We're talking about the housing market. They're both about the housing market. Both titles are about housing affordability, and they both talk about similar things, regulations. I don't know if the other article talked about the government-owned land, but other articles have.
Yeah.
There's such different slants on it, and nobody is coming up with a solution. They're not. Nobody's coming up with a solution on how to help people afford to buy homes.
Well, here's the problem. Okay. So I come in, I say, I figured out the fix. We're going to knock down some of the buildings on Rockville Pike that aren't really, maybe the Arby's or the 7-Eleven or the McDonald's. We'll knock that whole strip down, and we're going to put in all affordable housing. Then what happens in this county? A parade of minivans show up and SUVs protesting the affordable housing so close to their high school or so close to their elementary school or so close to whatever. It's happened. Look at the Kensington situation. They've been protesting the idea of affordable housing at the corner of Kensington and Knowles for the last 15 years.
I didn't know that.
It's not something that affordable housing is never run. So the answer is, Caryn, there's not a solution that we're going to get. So
there's not a solution, but I do think if, for example, if people's salaries increased and reflected the increased in value of homes in the local communities, things become more affordable to them, right? Because they make more money.
Yeah.
If people like myself get interest rate fatigue and start thinking about taking money out of their house because it's increased in value to then either move or do whatever they're going to do, that may increase inventory, and more inventory makes things more affordable. More choices, scarcity makes things more expensive. More choices makes them more affordable. These are things that are going to take time, and they have nothing to do with the president, by the way. They just don't. Oh, you're sweet. Kathy says, that's why I like you, Caryn. You try to stay out of politics and get into reality. I appreciate that. Thank you. I do try to stay out of politics because I live in DC and it's a lot here. It's a lot. I grew up in DC or outside of DC. And
I guess where I'm...
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I guess where I'm annoyed about everything that's happened the last 2 weeks is it's promising solutions that are not solutions.
Right.
And it's promising, we have, and this goes back to what I said a couple, feels like hours ago, when I said, I'm sad, right? I like it when people buy houses, not because we get paid, because they build their homes. And
it's so fun. They're so excited. Yeah.
And it's just turned into a pile of can I say shit lately because of all the restrictions or all all the negative stuff that's coming in. So people think interest rates are high. Houses are too expensive. Insurance rates, utilities, all this. You got this guy who stands in front of you, I'm going to make it cheaper for you, and here's how I'm going to do it. And then they float this thing over, and it means nothing for those people. Now, you and I've been here long enough to know there used to be a first-time home buyer credit for the District of Columbia, right? If you moved to the District of Columbia, was it 8 or 10,000? I can't remember.
You're going to ask me something I don't remember yesterday.
Okay. I think it was either $8,000 or $10,000 to move into the District of Columbia. The income restriction was 120,000. So anybody under 120,000 got the full 8 to 10 grand. And it was a federally funded program. It was done by act of Congress. And it was one of the coolest things for first-time home buyers because they felt like they were getting paid to buy a house. Now, here's the real cool thing about it is DC didn't keep track of when you were the first-time home buyer. So
really?
If you moved back to Maryland and then moved back to DC, guess what? First-time home buyer, here's your 10 grand. But this goes back to everything with the government. Regulation isn't what we need. Oversight is what we need. But something like that, and I'm not going to, you mentioned it, I didn't, a certain candidate had talked about a policy of a first-time home buyer grant. That's a great idea. And you could do it in a grant state where it's not just a gift, it's something they have to pay back after 10 years, let's say.
Understood. But giving buyers more money and not the inventory is not fixing the problem. I'm sorry, it's not. Yeah, it's creating more demand. It's going to make home prices go higher. I wasn't a fan of that, to be honest, because it's like, once again, it seemed to me like a blanket promise. Here, I'm going to give you, just like during the pandemic, I'm going to give you money. Okay. What are you going to do with the money? You want to buy a house? So does this person and this person, this person. Now it's going to be competition. The home price is going to go up. It doesn't make sense. So you can't have one without the other. That's why I said, is there a solution? No. If salaries increase and inventory increases and the delta becomes less egregious, housing will become more affordable for the people that are buying it. It's not going to be more affordable, like prices are going to come down. It's going to be more affordable for people to buy. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think it's going to take a while. What's happening now, and guys, if you're watching this outside of the DC area, please comment if you're feeling this, because we really are with all these go back to work. And if you don't want to work, buy, and we'll give you some money to leave. It's so disruptive. It's making people really scared. It's making people really panic and like not know what to do or change their life choices because now they have to do something and they go to work and there's no place for them. I mean, this is a real story. It's not an article. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, there's no place for you? And they're like, no, shut up. There's no place to work. I had to take, put it on my lap. Like, that's not helpful. And then it's funny because back to my Delaware story. So, we're speaking to these lenders about, the monthly number. And of course, you've got to talk about the interest rates. And I know that this big announcement's coming out today. And so they said, yesterday is like, well, you really should lock in at whatever it was. I don't remember the number anymore at this. And I'm like, but the current president said he's going to lower interest rates. The announcement's tomorrow. He's going to want to say, look what I did. Let's wait. Logic, right? Logical. Well, guess what? Nothing happened. In fact, I can show you all the screenshots I got from the lender. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. The basis points are higher. They're higher. They're higher. I'm like, finally, lock it. Forget it. Lock it. It was really interesting. So I wonder what he's going to say now. Trump, I mean, what's he going to say now? Or what about interest rates? What is he going to, nothing happened. You said you were going to lower interest rates.
The same thing. He walks back everything that he can't do. The groceries, he walked that back. Well, that's going to be really hard to do. The interest rates, right now, I think he is singularly focused on kicking a lot of people out and cutting jobs at the government. And I don't think that I unfortunately don't think real estate is really in his sights right now. But you're right. Without more inventory, prices are never going to go down.
Exactly. I mean, I do think it's in his sight because besides everything going on, that was the big promise. The big promise was inflation, grocery prices, getting you more money, getting rid of the, whatever he's getting rid of, and housing, housing affordability was a big campaign promise. Interest rates are going to be lower. The last administration messed it all up, blah, 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 all the rhetoric. So say what you do, what you say. If you're going to, my dog just came in. Hello, dog. If you're going to make housing more affordable, tell us how you're going to do that and tell us how long it's going to take, because I don't see in any of these articles, and we did this last week too with my guests, there were different articles, and she was in Arizona, so had a different perspective of what's happening. Interest rates are based on what? They're based on inflation, they're based on the job report, and they're based on the Treasury. I mean, there's not much, that's about it.
Are you talking about the mortgage interest rate or the Fed rate? Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about mortgage interest rates.
Yeah. So, then you also have to take into effect the deficit, which is nothing they ever mention, but has been the reason for the explanation of why there has not been a reduction since all these cuts have happened, which is that the bond market's looking at the security of the deficit and how deep it is and saying back to us, we're not real secure that the U.S. economy is going to do what we needed to do to give you the right rate. And so that insecurity is what's trumping.
I saw what you did there.
Trumping the Fed interest rate. So it's it's so funny because it's the stars of the bond market and the Fed aligning that bring us our rates. And the bond market is not happy with us right now.
Robert says Gen X is the best gen. Is that what I am? Gen X?
Yes,
we are. Gen yes, X. We agree with you. I always forget. One of
so if you consider yourself bookmarked in between singles and reality bites,
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what that. You're so
sorry. No one wants to talk about the deficit or national debt. No, well, no one yet, but they will. Right now, I think everyone's too scared to say anything. I don't know if I missed anybody else on here. I'm sorry if I did. Let me see. Best friendships you can make is happy home buyers. Happy home buyers is and not only that, but the coolest thing is when you've been in the business as long as we have, is you get to see them with their little kids. And then the kids grow up and they're going to college. Then they're downsizing. You get to see them grow, get bigger. And then also all walks of life. And it's just so cool, to see the same families growing and different things happening. And then you help their kids buy a house. It's just, that's the part of this job I like. All this other stuff, I could do without. All right, Matt, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking about this. It's a lot right now. It's a lot going on in our area. Like I said, if you guys are watching this in different parts of the area on the replay, definitely put in the comments if you're feeling kind of what's happening with the new administration and all the stuff that's going on with the Get Back to Work order, or, what you think's happening with interest rates, with housing affordability. We read two articles, one slanted left, one slanted right. They're both talking about the housing market, not about politics. So I'm curious what you think. I think that it's a conversation to be had. You all know what I think. I'm pretty vocal about it. Matt, thank you for your thoughts. Where can people find you? Because I know you do great lives on TikTok. Tell them how they can find you.
It's around the corner in the dark alley. You can find me usually on Friday night. No, you can find me at Smart Living Experts on TikTok. You can also find us at Smart Living Experts on YouTube and all the other social channels. We do daily updates on just whatever we want to talk about. Most of it all is about the real estate market, but also about how the local history and the history of our nation have unfolded and provided us this position that we're in right now, which
that's cool.
If you take a look, everything happens for a reason.
I didn't know you talk about history and stuff like that. That's when do you say you just do them randomly, or is there a time where you know to look out for you?
So daily, you'll see them posted every couple of times. We'll go live usually every Wednesday around 11 a.m., but that's going to be changing. And once TikTok goes away, I don't know what I'll do. So I'll probably be doing this here on YouTube because I enjoy hearing back from people when they're nice and when they're not nice.
Do you think TikTok's going to go away? I don't think it is. Do you think it is? I mean, it went away for a second and then came right back.
Yeah, but so the Chinese government has approved their autonomy to sell if they want to sell. So before January, they would not admit that they would allow them to sell. And they are just like any other Chinese company, they're a partial owner in them. What I find hilarious is that they canceled TikTok for security reasons and they allowed DeepSeek on everybody's phone. And it is not only part of the Chinese government, it is directly wired in. And that's another thing we talk about over my space is a lot of AI. And if you know how AI learns you, it is learning everything about these people. I don't.
Did you put it on your phone? I'm not doing it.
No way. I haven't even been to the website because I know how much AI is training on us. But yeah, that's what I got.
All right. Well, I'm gonna tune in some more because I think you're awesome. Thank you for coming on. I always love when you come on. It's always a fun conversation. Thank you all for joining us live. It's always more fun when you join us live. So if you're watching us on the replay, consider coming on live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I really appreciate y'all turning in. Thank you again, Matt.